Rain fell hard on the prison walls. The sound echoed through the long, cold hallway inside a small, dirty cell. An alien girl named Irene sat quietly in the corner. Her body hurt, her arm was bleeding, and her heart was full of fear. She had been a young soldier in the war. Her squad was ambushed, and she was taken by the enemy, the humans. She had heard stories about them all her life, that they were monsters, full of hate, and showed no mercy. Now she was their prisoner. She had not seen sunlight for days. Only metal bars, wet walls, and the sound of heavy boots outside. One day, a new prisoner was thrown into the cell. He landed hard on the floor with a loud thud. Irene quickly backed into her corner. Her claws ready, she looked closely. He was tall, strong, and covered in blood. He was human. Her eyes widened with fear. Was this the end? Would he kill her? But the human did nothing. He didn't look at her, didn't speak. He just lay there, breathing slowly. Hours passed, and he did not move. Orion stayed awake all night, watching him, waiting for the attack that never came. The next morning, the guards brought food. They threw 2 small trays through the slot. The human sat up slowly and pushed one tray toward her, still silent, still calm. She didn't understand. Why was he being kind? Was this a trick? She didn't eat. She just watched him again. Later that night, the cold wind blew through the broken wall. It was freezing inside the cell. Irene began to shiver, holding her arms tight. The human noticed. He looked at her, his face tired and bruised. Then he did something she never expected. He pulled off his blanket and walked slowly toward her. Irene froze, ready to defend herself. But the human didn't raise his hand, didn't show anger. He gently placed the blanket beside her and stepped back. Then he sat again, away from her. Close to the wall, Irene stared at the blanket. She didn't move for a long time, then slowly. With shaky hands, she pulled it over her shoulders. Warmth spread through her body. And for the first time in days, she stopped shaking. She whispered, almost too quietly to hear. "Thank you." The human didn't answer. He just closed his eyes and leaned back. In that moment, something inside Orion began to change. The next day, she woke up before him. He was still sleeping, his back against the wall. She saw his hands, bloody and wounded. Cuts from the fight, maybe from the guards. She looked at her small water bowl. Then she dipped a cloth into it and walked to him slowly. He opened one eye and watched her silently. She said nothing, just cleaned one of his wounds. He didn't stop her. He just nodded once. That was the first time they truly saw each other, not as enemies, but as survivors. Later, when the guards came again, they brought more pain. The human stepped in front of Orion and took the hit from the electric rod. He fell to the floor, groaning in pain. The guard laughed and left. Orion rushed to him and helped him sit up. "Why did you do that?" she asked. He looked at her with tired eyes and whispered. Because they hit smaller ones first. She didn't know what to say. She had never heard kindness from a human. Now she couldn't forget it. That night, she asked him softly, "What's your name?" The human answered after a moment. "Jace." She whispered her name to Irene from that moment on. They were no longer silent strangers. They were something else, not friends yet, but not enemies either. Jace taught her a few human words. She shared stories from her world. They laughed quietly. They cried once. When Jace spoke about his lost brother, one evening, heavy boots echoed down the hall. 2 guards opened the cell door. They dragged Jace outside. Irene screamed and tried to fight, but one guard threw her to the ground and locked the door again. She sat alone, waiting, afraid. Minutes turned to hours. Then the door opened again. They threw Jace back in his body, bruised, lips bleeding. Irene rushed to him. "Why?" she cried. He smiled weakly. "They don't like when I speak to you." She helped him sit, gave him water, and placed the blanket over his back. He looked at her and said in a low voice, "You're not a monster." Her eyes filled with tears. "Neither are you." And in that dark, broken cell, a bond was born, not through war or orders, but through simple acts of kindness. One shared blanket, one shared story, one human, one alien. Irene didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight, in the cold darkness, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Days passed slowly inside the prison cell. There were no windows, no time, only pain and silence. But something was changing. Not outside, but between Irene and the human named Jace. Irene had stopped fearing him. He had shown her kindness when no one else did. She no longer saw a monster, she saw a man who hurt, just like her, one morning. Jace woke up coughing, his hands were shaking, and his body was cold. Irene watched with worry. "You're sick," she said softly. Jace gave her a weak smile. "Just tired," he whispered, but Irene could see it was more than that. His wounds were not healing, and he had lost weight. That evening, when the guards came, they didn't bring food, only kicks and laughter. Jace protected her again, pushing her behind him. He was beaten badly. When the door closed, Irene helped him lie down. She took the small cloth from her pocket and cleaned the blood on his face. Jace grabbed her wrist gently. "You don't have to," he said. "I want to," she replied. "You helped me." They sat in silence for a while. Then Jace said, "I had a sister once." Irene turned to him. "What happened to her?" "She died in the first attack," Jace said slowly. "Your people bombed the colony." She was only 12. Irene lowered her head. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know." "I know you didn't," Jace replied. "War makes everyone blind." Irene thought about her own brother. He was taken by humans in the early days of the war. She never saw him again. "We've both lost," she said. Jace nodded. "But maybe we don't have to lose again." That night, Irene couldn't sleep. She kept hearing footsteps in the hallway. Strange ones, not the normal guards. She leaned close to the door and listened. She heard voices speaking in low tones. "The human is stronger than we thought," one voice said. "If he survives the next round, we send him to the pits." "What about the girl?" the other asked. "She's watching him too closely. Let her, it won't matter soon," the first voice replied. Then the footsteps faded. Irene sat back, her heart pounding. "The pits," she whispered. She had heard of them: death, matches, no escape, no mercy. She looked at Jace, who was sleeping. His face was pale, and his body weak. He would never survive the pits. She had to do something, but she didn't know what. The next morning, she found something strange in her food tray. A small piece of metal, flat and sharp, hidden under the bread. She looked through the bars, but no guard was in sight. Was this a test, or a gift from someone? She didn't care. She hid the metal shard in her sleeve. Later, she used it to unscrew the bottom of her water bowl. Inside, she found a piece of paper written in her language. It read, "Tunnel beneath you, under third stone. 2 nights from now, escape together or die apart." Her hands shook as she folded the paper again. She looked at Jace, who was awake now. He was staring at her, as if he already knew. "You found something?" he said. "Yes," she replied. "Away." Out. Jace didn't smile. Instead, he asked, "Are you sure you trust me?" Irene didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I don't know what's out there, but I know I'd rather face it with you than stay here alone." That night, they whispered plans in the dark. 2 nights, 1 chance, and no mistakes. The guards were growing crueler, and Jace's time was running out when Jace fell asleep again. Irene sat beside him. She placed the blanket over both of them, and for the first time since the war began, she felt something new. Not fear, not hate, but hope. The air inside the cell felt heavier than before. Irene sat near the wall, counting every second. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor. On the third stone from the left, that was the one the note had mentioned. Beneath it was the tunnel, the only. Way out, Jace leaned against the wall, quiet and weak. He had not eaten in 2 days. But his eyes were still sharp, watching the guards carefully. "Tonight," Irene whispered. Jace gave a small nod. "Ready?" he said. Even though his body was barely holding together, the guards passed their cell once more. Laughing, they didn't look inside this time, to them. It was just a quiet alien girl and a dying human. Nothing to fear, nothing to notice. As the lights dimmed, night came. The hallway fell into shadow. This was their moment. Irene moved to the third stone. Her claws slipped into the edges and slowly lifted it up. Underneath was a small tunnel, just enough for one person to crawl through. She looked at Jace. "You go first," she said. He shook his head. "You're faster." He replied, "You lead." She nodded and slipped into the tunnel. The air was damp and smelled like metal and dirt. She crawled through the tight space. Her heart pounding, Jace followed behind, breathing hard but steady. Minutes passed, maybe longer. The tunnel felt endless. Finally, Irene reached a loose metal grate. She pushed it open and climbed out into a storage room. The lights were off, and everything was quiet. She turned and pulled Jace up. He collapsed for a moment, gasping. "You okay?" She asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just need a second." They listened carefully. No footsteps, no alarms. They were still hidden for now. They moved through the storage room, grabbing what they could. A small pack of water, some dry food, and a basic med kit. Jace took a metal pipe to use as a weapon. They pushed open a side door and entered a dark hallway. This part of the prison was old, unused. Dust covered the walls and wires hung from the ceiling. "We need to find the exit." "Tunnels," Irene said. "There's an old service route that leads to the forest outside. How do you know?" Jace asked. "I read blueprints during training," she replied, "but I never thought I'd use them like this." They moved fast but careful. Every sound made them freeze. Every door could hide a guard. Suddenly, a voice echoed from a speaker. "Warning, cell block 9 breach detected." They ran. Jace limped, holding his side. Irene grabbed his arm and helped him move faster. Behind them, alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed across the hallway. "They know," Jace said. "We're not stopping," Irene replied. "Not now." They reached a rusted door at the end of the hall. Irene pulled out the sharp metal shard she had kept. She jammed it into the lock and twisted. Click. The door opened. Cool night air rushed in. They were outside. The prison was behind them, tall, metal, and full of hate. Ahead, a dark forest stretched for miles. The trees were black and twisted. But they offered cover. They ran into the trees, hearts racing behind them. Spotlights lit up the sky. Shouts and sirens followed, but they kept moving. Branches scratched their faces. Roots tried to trip them. Still, they didn't stop. Jace stumbled again and fell. Irene turned and knelt beside him. "I can't," he whispered. "You can," she said. "We're almost there." She helped him up. They walked deeper into the forest. Each step was pain, but it was also freedom. Hours passed before they reached a small clearing. There, half buried in leaves and vines, was an old escape shelter. Irene pried the door open, and they crawled inside. The shelter was tiny but safe. There was a light, a heater, and a water system. They locked the door behind them and collapsed on the floor. Jace looked at her, tired but smiling. "You got us out," he said. "No," Irene replied. "We got each other out." She handed him water and wrapped his wounds with the medkit. He didn't speak, but his eyes said everything. They were no longer enemies, not prisoners, not soldiers, just two lives who chose to trust. Outside, the forest burned slowly. Searchlights passed, but never found them inside the shelter. Under the soft light, they were safe, for now. Irene opened her eyes to soft orange light flickering against the metal walls. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she remembered the escape, the run, the hidden shelter in the forest. She looked beside her. Jace was still sleeping, his breathing slow and deep. Outside, the sky was dark, filled with heavy clouds. The wind pushed against the trees, making the leaves whisper like voices. The night was not peaceful, but it was better than a prison. Irene stood quietly and checked their supplies. Water, almost finished, food, just enough for a day or two. She sighed and stepped outside, her feet crunching softly on dead leaves. The forest was dense and quiet, but something felt strange. She sniffed the air, smoke. She turned quickly and climbed up a small hill to see better. Far in the distance, red light glowed between the trees. It was a fire and it was spreading fast. She rushed back to the shelter. "Jace," she said. Shaking his shoulder gently, he opened his eyes slowly. "We have to move," Irene said. "There's a fire coming." Jace tried to sit up, but winced in pain. "My leg," he muttered. "It's worse." Ariane checked his injury. The wound on his leg was swollen and hot. "You can't walk far," she said. "I'll carry you." Oh. Jace laughed softly. "You're half my size." "I'm stronger than I look," she replied. Together, they packed what little they had. Irene helped him stand, placing his arm around her shoulder, slowly. They made their way out of the shelter and into the woods. The wind had changed, carrying thick black smoke with it. It made their eyes sting, and their lungs burn. "We have to go west," Orion said. "There's a river that way. It might stop the fire." They walked for hours, sometimes resting, sometimes crawling. The fire got closer, the sky turning red and ash falling like snow. At one point, a burning tree crashed beside them. Jace pushed Orion away just in time. They hit the ground hard, but they were alive. "You saved me," Irene said, breathing fast. "You would have done the same," Jace replied, coughing. Finally, they reached the river. It was wide and fast. The water cold and clear, they dropped beside it, gasping for air. They had escaped the fire for now. Irene cleaned Jace's wound, using river water. He groaned, but didn't stop her. "You should leave me," he said suddenly. "You'll be safer alone." Irene looked at him sharply. "Don't say that," she replied. "You gave me your blanket, your food, your trust. I'm not leaving you." Jace smiled weakly. "You really believe I'm not a monster?" he asked. "I know you're not," Orion said. "My people lied." She stared at the river, her voice soft. "I was trained to hate humans, to fear them. But now, I don't know what to believe anymore." Jace looked up at the sky. "Maybe we were both lied to," he said. "But we can choose what we believe now." They sat in silence, listening to the crackling fire behind them. It burned the trees, the past, the pain, but not their hope. Later that night, they built a small fire by the river. Irene shared the last of the food. Jace smiled. "This tastes better than prison." "Food," he joked. Irene laughed softly. It was the first time she had laughed in weeks. The stars above began to shine through the smoke, bright, clear, and beautiful. "What will you do if we survive this?" Irene asked. "I don't know." Jace replied, "Find my people again. Maybe fly a ship. Maybe just rest. What about you?" "I never thought that far," she admitted. "I was just a soldier. Now I'm something else. You're brave." Jace said, "And kind. Even if you hide it well." Ariane looked down. "No one's ever called me kind." "Well, someone should," Jace replied. They sat close, letting the fire warm their hands. The wind had calmed. The danger passed for now, but inside them, something new was growing. Not fear, not hate, but trust, and maybe even friendship. They had lost everything. But they still had each other, and that was enough for tonight. Morning light filtered through the trees. The forest was quiet again. But the smell of smoke still lingered in the air. Ariane stood by the river, washing her hands in the cold water. Behind her, Jace rested against a rock, trying to stay awake. His wound was worse now, red and swollen. He didn't say much. But Irene could see the pain in his face. They needed help, and soon she had to make a decision. She looked at the small transmitter she had hidden in her belt pouch. It was old and weak, but it could send a short message, a signal, a request, a choice. She had 2 frequencies saved, one to the humans, and one to her own command. She stared at the blinking light. If she called the humans, they might rescue Jace, but if she called her own people, they would punish her for escaping. Or worse, use her to set a trap. She heard Jace's voice behind her. "What are you thinking about?" Ariane turned around. "I found a way to contact someone," she said, "but I don't know who I can trust." Jace gave a tired smile. "Not me." "No," she said quickly. "I mean, not anymore. You gave me your blanket, you took the beatings, you stayed." Jace looked down at the ground. "I didn't know what else to do," he said. "I just knew I didn't want you to suffer alone." Irene looked at the transmitter again. Then she pressed a few buttons and activated the human frequency. She spoke into it slowly. "This is Irene, former soldier of Clan Drek. I am not your enemy anymore. I have a wounded human with me. He needs help." She ended the message. Jace blinked in surprise. "You really did it?" he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," she replied, "but I chose you." They waited. Hours passed. The sun rose higher. Jace fell asleep again, his body exhausted. Suddenly, Irene heard the sound of engines. Not one, but 2 ships. She stood quickly and looked up through the trees. 2 small scout ships circled the sky. One had human markings, the other her people symbol. Her heart stopped. She hadn't expected both to hear the signal. The human ship landed far on the left side, beyond the ridge, but the other ship landed nearby. Just beyond the tree line, she grabbed her weapon and stood in front of Jace. From the trees, a voice called out, "Irene." She froze. That voice, she knew it. It was Commander Vex, her former leader, the one who had trained her, the one who sent her to war. Vex stepped forward slowly. He was tall, armored, and confident. Behind him were 2 Drek soldiers, their weapons drawn. "You made it out alive," Vex said. "I'm impressed." Irene didn't lower her weapon. "I didn't run," she said. "I escaped." Vex smiled. "You always had fire," he said. "But I didn't come to fight. I came to bring you home." "I am home," Irene replied. She glanced back at Jace, who was still unconscious. "This human saved me," she added. "I won't let you hurt him." Vex's smile faded. "This human is the enemy," he said. "He is the reason we lost so many." "No," she said firmly. "We lost because we listened to lies. This man is not the monster." Vex stepped closer. "Then you are the traitor," he said. "You will come with us, or we will take you by force." Just then, a voice came through the trees. "Back away." It was a human soldier, rifle raised, armor shining. He was not alone. 2 more humans stepped into the clearing, weapons ready. Now both sides faced each other, guns pointed, tension rising, and Irene stood between them. "Stop," she shouted. "No more killing, no more war." Both groups paused. "I called for help," she said. "Not to start another battle." Vex stared at her. "Step aside," he ordered. "No," she replied. "If you want to hurt him, you'll have to go through me." Silence followed, heavy and thick. Then Jace coughed behind her, slowly waking up. He opened one eye and saw what was happening. A weak smile touched his lips. "You picked your side," he whispered. "I picked what's right." She whispered back. Vex shook his head slowly. "You're no longer Drek," he said. "Remember that?" He turned and walked away. The other soldiers followed him into the forest. No shots were fired. No blood was spilled. This time, words had been enough. The human soldiers lowered their weapons. One of them knelt beside Jace. "We've got you, brother," he said. Irene stood back and let them work. Her hands shook, but her heart felt calm. She had made her choice, and it felt right. As the medics lifted Jace onto a stretcher, he reached out to her. She took his hand, warm and alive. "You trusted me," he said. "Yes," she replied. "And I won't stop." Above them, the sky was blue again. No fire, no smoke. Just open sky, and somewhere far ahead, peace. The human ship lifted off slowly, its engines humming gently under the forest sky. Inside the ship, Irene sat beside Jace, watching him breathe through a mask. He was stable now, no longer on the edge of death. Human medics had done their work fast and with care. She had never seen technology like this before. Clean rooms, warm lights, soft voices. This ship didn't feel like a war machine, it felt like a home. Jace's eyes opened slowly. He looked at her and smiled weakly. "You didn't leave me," he whispered. "Of course not," she replied. "You gave me your blanket." They both smiled, and for a moment, all the pain felt far away. Later, a human officer named Captain Red entered the med bay. She was tall, sharp-eyed, and serious. But when she looked at Irene, she softened. "You saved one of my men," she said. "I've read the report." Irene stood up slowly. "I didn't do it for reward," she said. "I did it because it was right." Captain Red nodded. "I believe you," she said. "But the council will ask questions." "Not everyone trusts a Drek soldier." "I understand," Irene said. "But I'll answer whatever they ask." The ship moved through the stars, heading toward a human colony called Haven Reach. It was a neutral zone, a place where peace was possible. Irene looked out the window, watching the stars pass by. She had never seen them like this before, not as targets, but as beautiful lights. When they arrived, the ship docked in a quiet port. Jace was moved to recovery, while Irene was taken to a meeting room. She wasn't chained, but she was watched, still. No one treated her with hate, only caution. Inside the meeting room were 4 humans, each dressed in command uniforms. Captain Reg stood beside them, silent but supportive. Irene took a deep breath and began. She told them everything: her training, the lies she was taught, the prison, the escape, and most of all, what Jace had done. "He didn't attack me," she said. "He protected me. He shared food, warmth, and hope. No monster does that." The room was quiet when she finished. One officer leaned forward. "Why did you send the signal to us?" he asked. Irene looked him in the eye. "Because I trusted him," she said. "And because I wanted to stop running." Another officer spoke. "If we offer you protection, will you stay loyal?" Irene nodded. "Yes," she said. "Not just because I owe Jace, but because I believe in peace now." The officers whispered among themselves. Captain Red finally stepped forward. "The council will decide within the day," she said. "You may rest until then." They took Orion to a small room, simple but clean. She sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Her heart was full of questions. Would they let her stay? Could she really live among humans? Would her people ever forgive her? A soft knock broke the silence. Jace stood at the door, leaning on a walking stick. His body still healing, but his smile strong. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Always," she said. He sat beside her and handed her a small box. She opened it and found a human crew badge. Her eyes widened. "What is this?" she asked. "A welcome," Jace replied. "The captain said if you want it, The crew wants you." Irene touched the badge gently. It was real. Solid metal, with the symbol of the ship engraved deep. She closed the box and held it tightly. "I don't know if I deserve this," she said. "Neither did I once," Jace said. "But someone gave me a chance." Hyan looked at him. "Will your people really accept me?" "Some will," he said. "Some won't, but the ones that matter already do." Tears filled her eyes. She wiped them quickly, not wanting to look weak. "Thank you," she said. "For everything." Jace stood slowly. "Get some rest." He said, "You've got a big decision to make." She nodded and watched him leave. Then she looked at the badge again. It wasn't just a symbol. It was a choice. A new path. That night, she dreamed of stars. Not falling. Not burning, but guiding. And in her dream, a human voice whispered, "You're safe now." The stars outside the window were still the same. Cold, bright, endless, but for Orion. Something had changed. She stood in front of a large mirror in her new crew uniform. It felt strange against her skin. Not because it was human-made, but because it meant she belonged here now. She touched the badge on her chest. The one Jace had given her. It wasn't just a piece of metal, it was trust. It was a second chance. A voice came through the speaker in her room. Final meeting in conference. Room 1, all crew and guests requested. Ariane took a deep breath and left her room. The hallways of the ship were still unfamiliar, but no one stared at her anymore. Some even nodded as she passed. When she entered the conference room, she saw Jace already sitting. His leg was still bandaged, but he looked stronger now. He smiled when he saw her, and she smiled back. Captain Reg stood at the front of the room. She looked at Irene, then at the others. "This is a short meeting," she said, "but an important one." She turned to Irene. "You are now officially part of this ship. If you accept the badge, you accept the duty." Irene stepped forward. "I accept," she said. "I will protect this crew as if it were my own." There was silence, then soft clapping. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. After the meeting, Jace walked beside her through the corridor. "You did it," he said. Irene looked at him and smiled. "We did it." They walked to the observation deck together. It was quiet, the stars stretching across the black sky. Jace leaned against the rail and looked out. "I used to hate the stars," he said. "They always reminded me of what I lost." Irene stood beside him, "But now?" He took a breath. "Now they remind me of what I found." She didn't say anything. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small item. It was the sharp metal shard she had used to open the prison lock. She held it out to Jace keep. "This," she said. "It saved us." Jace took it and looked at it for a long time. Then he put it in his jacket. "Thank you," he said. They sat on a bench, side by side. No words were needed for a while. After some time, Jace spoke again. "What will you do now?" "I don't know," Irene said. "But for the first time, I'm not afraid to decide." Jace nodded. "You're one of us now," he said. No more running later that night. Irene sat in her room alone. She opened a recording device and began to speak. "This is Orion," she said softly. "Born to fight, raised to hate, trained to destroy. But that is not who I am anymore." She looked at the stars through the window. "I thought humans were monsters. I thought trust was weakness. But then one gave me his blanket. One took a beating for me, one stayed. When everyone else left, she paused, her eyes soft. He whispered to me, 'You're safe now.'" A tear ran down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She let it fall. "I don't know what comes next," she said, "but I know I will. Walk forward. Not back. I am not just Drek. I am not just a soldier. I am a person, and I choose peace." She stopped the recording and sat still. The ship hummed quietly around her. She felt the weight of her past, but also the light of her future. A knock came at the door. She opened it, and Jay stood there, holding 2 cups. "Hot tea," he said, Earth style. She laughed and let him in. They sat together, sipping quietly, not as enemies, not even as just allies, but as something more, people who had shared pain. "And now shared hope, you know," Jay said. "You never gave the blanket back." Irene raised an eyebrow. "It's mine now," she said. Smiling, he chuckled. "Fair enough." They looked out the window one last time before sleeping. Irene wrapped herself in that old, torn blanket. It wasn't warm because of the fabric. It was warm because of what it meant that she was no longer alone, that someone had whispered, "You're safe now." And for the first time in her life, she believed it.